Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits, where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us to unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets to effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
All right, get ready for a very inspiring conversation. I am thrilled with all of the insight, personal information that Miss Sabrina Hernandez Walker just shared with me. Wow, is she a firecracker, overachiever? She really dropped some great nuggets. I loved this one about grace and space. And she also shares a little bit about her personal health journey and how that shows up for her in what she does and how she supports the community. So go ahead and have a listen now to Sabrina, and another shout out to this season's sponsor, Fundraising Academy at National University. Thank you. All right. Well, I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you, Miss Sabrina. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. As I said, Jarrett, you're one of the people that when I first started out in this journey, I LinkedIn stalked, and I even credit you, and I told you I'm stealing your content. I love the way you do things. So thank you for that. Thank you for the inspiration.
Oh, yeah. Well, absolutely. There's so many of us doing such great work in the world. And I recently heard someone say, I think the consultant world for nonprofits is oversaturated. And I said, I beg to differ, because we all provide something different. We all go around it a little differently. Not to mention, Sabrina, as you know, there are 1.8 million nonprofits registered in the US.
Yes, there's a lot of them out there. And unfortunately, I don't think there's enough consultants to help all the 1.8. I think what happens with us is when we go into the space, what we start doing is following other consultants online and on LinkedIn and things like that. And we become more aware, which is a little disappointing for me, because when I sat in that chair as a CEO of a nonprofit, I was unaware oftentimes of I could have got a consultant to help me with that, or a coach to help me with that. So I think that's more of a perception thing, and we need to be not, I love following, like I said, I followed you, I follow a lot of people, but we also need to be making sure that our target audience and the people who really need us are aware that we exist.
Absolutely. We are here. Well, I love that we have just, gone into the deep end. I love deep end conversations. I'm going to take us back, because I would love for you to share, Sabrina, for all of our listeners. And I know we have quite a few. I like to start off with this question and, really asking you, what are the names that you go by, even some of the titles that you have? Also, another way to ask this is like, how many hats do you wear? What are all the things that you're spinning in the air in your world? What does that look like?
Well, I love doing this, and I'm going to take it in a different direction of it, bring it back to where it goes. But I do this quite often. When I was depending on where you know me in my life, I go by a different title. So when I was in high school, they used to call me Brains, because I have this big forehead, and I would say, well, it's all brains. It's all brains. So they would call me Brains. And then if you call me Brina, then I know you're a sibling of mine, or a cousin, a first cousin of mine, because they're the only ones who drop the S and the A, and they just call me Brina, right? If you call me Mom, then of course I'm Mom. If someone says babe, and it's better be only my husband, then I'm babe, right? But my grandkids, which is the title that I love the most, is they call me BB. And that's Swahili for grandma. And that's what my 5 grandkids call me. They call me BB. And then in the community, of course, I'm a community servant, and I love that title as well. And I'm an
Oh
entrepreneur
my
on top of that.
gosh.
So it's
Yeah,
a good life.
on top of all of that.
Yeah.
That
So
is
it's good.
so cool. I love learning the names, especially BB. My mom's name is Pleslin, and it's a long name and it's a mouthful, as you can only imagine, for grandkids to say. So my son, when he started, referencing her, he just took it all the way back to P, and he calls her P. So I love BB. That is super cool. Well, you've been in the nonprofit sector quite some time. You've held the CEO role, as you mentioned earlier. You show up now as a consultant. What are all of the things that you do in this nonprofit space? Because again, with these listeners, I really want them to see and feel their way through the variety of conversations I am having with amazing guests like yourself. What is it that you do in the sector? How do you show up and support the work?
So I show up and support the work by strategic planning, board education, and supporting CEOs. That's leadership development. And it's not just the CEOs, it's any of their leadership staff. But I particularly like to work with CEOs of nonprofit, especially those that are maybe new to their role, or they are in the midst of change and they have to take on a new viewpoint of dealing with the organization because the organization is growing, or they just they're transitioning their board. All those strategic conversations and those strategic decisions, I really love helping people navigate that.
And that is so needed. And as you said earlier, when you were CEO, not really understanding the plethora, the buffet, if you will, of consultants that are out there to support. Man, I love that this is your niche and what you're doing. I want to ask you as well. I didn't know that you had grandkids, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that, as I hear, I'm not there, thankfully, yet. But that is such a privilege, such an honor. I would love to know how you are maintaining this very vibrant professional life and space, as well as your mom title, your BB title. How do you manage between the work, Sabrina, and the personal Sabrina, as well as all of your servant leadership? How do you manage all of this?
Yeah, very delicately. It can be overwhelming, but I love community service. I love spending time with my family. And so what I do is, and the agreement that I have made with my family is Monday through Friday is work, and weekends are family times. And it's very rare on the weekends that I would engage in work. I mean, I do. Sometimes you have to, but there's very rare times on the weekend that I will engage in work. And we also, although my children are adults, we take a family vacation, like collectively with their spouse, with the grandkids, at least once a year. We all go, and we usually go to a very remote hill country place in Texas where we can't get distracted by TV or cell phones or any of those things. And we take the dogs and we just kind of hang out, and we do the Texas things like barbecue and be outdoors and that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at. I can tell you this though, I have recently been struggling in the community phase because they know me as community servant. And like I mentioned, one of the hats that I wear is entrepreneur. So I say I have to reintroduce myself to the community because oftentimes I tell people I have bills to pay too. I love giving back. I love that. But at the same time, I have bills to pay as well. And I have to reintroduce myself to the community because I found myself planning a citywide college signing day for 1,000 teenagers as a volunteer.
Oh, girl. Yeah,
Mhm.
I want to touch on that because I started my business 15 years ago, and this roller coaster, I say, some days the ride is amazing and my hands are all the way up in the air and I'm screaming for joy. And then there's some days I'm gripping that safety bar that, hopefully is securely on our lap, going, what the heck have I signed up for?
Yeah.
And in my early years, that happened a lot to me, Sabrina.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, well, can you do this for free?
Right.
And we want to work with someone who truly believes in our mission and wants to give back to our mission. And I feel you for that, because
Yeah.
that's a little difficult to navigate at times.
It is very difficult to navigate, especially when you have, I don't see it as a reflection on them. I see it as a reflection on me, because that's what I have presented myself. And so I say to myself, okay, Sabrina, what are you going to do? And I feel like I need to reintroduce myself and say, this is what I do now. And this
Yeah.
is what it takes to engage with me now. That's going to be a
That
hard
is very
conversation, girl.
mature.
I don't know how I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
but I have to do it.
Well, here we are. We're
Yeah.
practicing it,
We're
right? We're
practicing
putting it
right
out
now.
there.
Hopefully
Yeah.
they'll listen to
That
your
I want to
podcast and they'll hear it and I won't have to have the conversation. No.
That's right. Just send them
That's
this link and they'll
yes.
know exactly. But I want to honor you for that, because not only is that mature, that's very professional of you, and really level setting those expectations. Maybe a turn I want to take, but I recently saw a post of yours, which you do some amazing posts, and they're authentic and they're you, and you just shine. You're just full of energy. I can feel it as I see
Thank
it.
you.
But you just shared one, and you were drinking out of this very huge Stanley cup, or the like, bright pink, and you shared about, oh, there it is. Yeah, for those of you that might be watching on video, the YouTube, that is the beautiful cup. But you shared a little bit about your health journey. Is that something you're comfortable sharing a little bit more about?
Oh yes. I share it because I think that it is I think that people need to hear it, because I did serve in a nonprofit for 20 years and I served as a CEO for 15 years. And we talk about this all the time, you can get burnt out. And if you don't listen to your body, it can turn into dis-ease in your body. And so my cancer diagnosis, I got diagnosed with two cancers at one time, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and multiple myeloma. I know. I did not know you could get diagnosed with two cancers at the same time either. I found
I
out
didn't.
you can.
Yeah.
You can.
You're
Two
just an
blood cancers.
overachiever. Oh,
Overachiever,
wow.
always have been. Always have been.
You're
That's
like,
exactly
one's
what
not
my
enough.
mom said. My mom said, you've
Yeah.
always been special. You've always been special. And there you go. So yeah, and stress. Part of that was stress. And so I remember when I got diagnosed in 2018. I went through 10 months of chemo, and then they gave me like a month, 30 day and a half, break. And then I did a stem cell transplant in 2019. And when you do a stem cell transplant, you have to stay in the hospital for like 30 days. You're being born again. They take everything out and put back in, and you don't have an immune system. So you have to stay in the hospital and be isolated. And I launched my business from the hospital bed, because I said, I got 30 days. That's one. You can always find a silver lining in anything. Isolation. So let's do something with this time. But really what got me was I didn't want anybody else to have to go through this. And so I will say this, Jerry, I would say that I was blessed, even though I say it was the stress. I was blessed because I was a part of a national affiliation. It was a local, but I was a part of a national affiliation. So if I needed, let's say, if I needed a resource development plan, there was someone I could go to help me with that. If I needed a sample policy, or if I needed to talk about my board or get some direction, at least I had that. I started thinking about all of those, that 1.8 million organizations, and the smaller ones, or maybe they're not even small, but they don't have a national affiliation. They don't have that support. That was my initial thought, like, oh my God, what about those people? Like, if I was stressed out and I had the support,
Right.
what's happening to them? And
Yeah.
so that's what I wanted to be, that clearinghouse for those organizations. I wanted to. My husband, when I was going through chemo, he's the one, you have to retire. You have to retire. And I had 20 years. And one of those weekdays, that's when I said, fine, I'll retire. But as soon as I said it, I regretted it. And that's why when I had those 30 days, I was like, I'm doing this thing over here. And he would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm building an empire. So that was the response.
Oh my gosh, you are amazing. What do you do now? I heard you say, like, work is Monday through Friday. My me time, my family time is Saturday, Sunday. What else do you do to really balance and infuse some self-care, some relaxation? Because hopefully you don't only get that in a hospital stay, Sabrina.
You're right. No, but I find joy in getting up in the morning and taking my dog for a walk. I find joy, and no one judge me out there. I find joy in listening to podcasts and audiobooks. I love learning. And so if I'm listening to a podcast or audiobook, to me, that's very relaxing. And my podcasts and audiobooks are about professional development and self-development and mindset, a lot of mindset. So I also, I don't want to claim it because I don't do it as often as I should, but I have some friends that are into, like, I don't want to say yoga, but they do meditation, and sometimes I'll join them for things. I say it's woo woo, and then they say, girl, you grew up Pentecostal. That's woo woo. So I let them have it. I was like, you're right. It is. So
Oh my
I do
gosh.
things like that. I hang out a lot
Yeah.
with the women in my circle. Women give me so much energy. I grew up with women. My mother was a missionary in a church. My grandma was an evangelist. I grew up with a female pastor, which was unheard of at the time. So I tend to surround myself with very successful women. And I'm not saying type A, but they're very successful. Some might be quiet, but they really know what they're doing in their lanes. And I get my energy from them.
That's so fascinating. And I'm curious, do you not only get your energy from them, do you pick up cues of, like, when they're stressed, what they do, or when they are starting to feel overwhelmed in life and juggling all the plates I'm sure that they're also juggling? How does that show up maybe in that community?
Yeah, it is true. One of my friends, Marsha Terry, she introduced me to the phrase, give yourself grace and
Yeah.
space. And
Ooh.
so that she introduced me to that probably right around COVID. And to this day, that is something that I do. I give grace and I give space. And the other one, and I can't remember which one said this, but this was a good one. They were like, instead of calling people out, let's call them in. Maybe they don't know. So let's call them in. Don't get mad. Don't, let's call them in and say, I know you. And I know I took it like this, but I know you. So I know you didn't mean it. Or if you did, can you help me understand why you said it the way you said it? And pull them to the side and say that, instead of getting that fire right away. So I've learned things from these ladies that have been absolutely, life changing as you develop and grow.
That lands with me. I will never forget this. Let's not call them out. Let's call them in. It
Yes.
reminds me, similar to you, I love being part of women's groups. And there was a group here in my community called Garden Club. We did not garden, right? It really started as a book club that evolved into just chatter. I will say the women who started it, the couple actually were big into 12 steps. And so they brought a lot of like the 12-step principles and kind of like that language, if you will, into the circle. And so we all shared, but there was not crosstalk. There was not, well, you should do this. There was not, like advice really given. It was more compassion and empathy. But one of the oldest women, and she was in her 90s, her name was Rhoda, very sweet woman. And I thought, Sabrina, like, we are probably killing this woman with the words she's hearing, the language that sometimes comes out of our mouth. And she was there for it. But her phrase, like this, let's not call them out, let's call them in. Her phrase was, life is real, it's not ideal. And that was something that landed with me too, that even in these storms and challenges that we have faced, and let's be honest, we'll probably still face again because they just change.
Yes.
I really have to remind myself of Rhoda's phrase of life is real, it's not ideal.
Right. And you have to take that because she's lived on this earth for 90 years plus. So she knows what. Yes, so she's still here. She knows what she's talking about. So let's take it. Let's take it. I love that. I love surrounding myself with wise women because they just make you better. And so
they do. They make you better. Well, talk to us about, we don't have too much longer, but I'd like to know, what are some things you do for fun? What does that look like for you?
Well, to look at me, you wouldn't think that I would do these things, but I like to step outside of my comfort zone, and it really is outside of my comfort zone, but I make myself do them anyway. So I've been skydiving. I've been rappelling off a very, very large building. I've been zip lining over Belize. I'm going to Jamaica on this upcoming trip, and I'm trying to decide, am I going to go parasailing, or I've swum with the dolphins. So I always try to make myself step out of my comfort zone, because there's great learning outside of your comfort zone, and you can't picture yourself like skydiving. Like, I got up in that airplane and I looked around and I Sabrina, what are you doing? And then you're up there and there's nothing you can do. There's only one way down, really. You got to jump.
That's right.
You got to jump. So, okay. I think I told the guy, I said, just push me, because I don't know if I can just do it myself. And he pushed me and I went, and it was beautiful. I opened my eyes, I saw it. And I remember when I went rappelling, I did the Lord's Prayer all the way down. I was the slowest one down. It was how many stories? Like 20-story building or something. I was the slowest one going down that building. But once I got down, I felt really good about myself. I will never do that one again. But everything else, I will jump out of airplane. I will swim with the dolphins. I will zip line again. I'll ride the ATVs, but I will not rappel ever again. But I learned that about myself.
Yeah. And you learn these things outside of your comfort zone. Okay. Final question. What is your next big, bold, fun adventure?
Well, like, I'm going to Jamaica, like I said, and I'm still deciding, am I going to parasail, or am I I'm trying to decide. My sister said she wasn't going to do any of it with me. I said, either I'm going to zip line again or I'm going to parasail, but I probably parasail because I've done the zip lining. And the thing is, you only live once. And so for me, you only live once. How do you know you don't like it unless you try it? And if you can try it in a safe environment, even better. So that's the goal.
That's the goal. Oh my gosh, Sabrina, I would love to go on these trips with you. And I live vicariously seeing what you share. I mostly see it on LinkedIn, and you're right. I did see the skydiving. I think I did see the rappelling. Those posts, they are just fascinating to me. And I'm sure people have found you fascinating in this conversation. So if there's a CEO that's listening and they're thinking, I too had no idea that I could call in some help, how do we find you? Is there a website, LinkedIn? Like, if someone wants to connect with you, Sabrina, where should they connect with you?
They can find me, I'm just going to give the website and then from there you can jump on. But www.supportingworldhope.com. I am not a nonprofit. I am an LLC. I know my name sounds like that, but I explain it quite often. Look, I am here to support nonprofits who give the hope to the world. And so hence the name Supporting World Hope.
Supporting World Hope, Sabrina Hernandez Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, my friend. It's been such a pleasure. And yeah, and I learned so much more about you. I love having these conversations. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.